I drove 11 hours to and from Carlisle to collect this engine. But here's the thing, this engine has a very bad knocking noise. It was replaced with a completely new engine about 2 years ago, and it's been sitting since then. The crank works, it's just knocking quite badly. So I'm thinking, out of two bad engines, we can make one good engine. So let's have a look inside. So first up is to remove the engine from my L322. The engine was lifted in without straps, so I'm actually copying the way they lifted the engine into my car rather than trying to awkwardly get some straps around it. Thankfully, it worked. And here she is, and as you can see, none of this has been covered up with anything, so there's probably all sorts of debris and dust in there, so I don't think I'm going to use this bit. But all being well, we should have a good crankshaft, 12 good pistons and conrods, and a good engine block, and that's what we need. So using those three parts, we're then going to put those into my engine, and yeah, that's sort of my thinking. From those, we should be able to make, like I say, two engines into one good one. But yeah, first, before I start stripping this down, I'm going to remove some of these spark plugs and get the borescope in and just check this top end looks okay. This is now my second time stripping down the DB9 engine, of course, so the disassembly process was considerably quicker. Last time I removed the spark plugs, I had a broken plug, so I was hoping there wouldn't be a repeat of this. On this occasion, though, they were all okay. Well, that's at least if you're comparing it to this one. If you recall, this has come out of my engine. The tip was broken off, and that was a sign of bad things to come, and sure enough, it was very bad. But the fact all the spark plugs are okay is probably a good indicator, at least so far, the best indicator I've got 5 minutes in, that, well, we should have a good block, is that, yeah, all the spark plugs are good, unlike this one from my old engine. If I'm totally honest with you guys, I was actually very tempted to use the heads and just keep them how they are until I saw that these weren't covered. And the spark plugs are in there. I thought the tops might have been actually okay rather than dismantling them, just putting them back together. But that's just me being honest, but I've just seen something that means, yeah, they're definitely coming apart. So I was just using the trusty borescope, and I was working my way from the back of the engine to the front because I was expecting there to be more likely issues here, and all was looking good in the first 10 cylinders. But then I get to, let's have a look. Look at that, there's actually water in there. Don't know if it'll let me get a better angle, but oh, there you go. You can kind of just see there's water in there. And then if I do the same on this side, more water. Whoops. To be honest, I've not really discussed it, but you're probably wondering, why have I just bought another poorly engine? Why not just buy a completely fine one? And the truth is, full DB9 engines are going for around £13,000. And I just don't have that to chuck at this project, because suddenly we're going to struggle to recuperate our money, and I want to try and be a bit smart about it on how we're spending our money. So I paid £4,500 for this one. I've got a VAT receipt, so I'll claim back 20% of that as well, which leaves us at what? £3,600 if my maths is correct, but you might need to check that. And I think potentially what we've got here, regardless, we're going to have a spare set of heads, we're going to have a spare crankshaft, we're going to have spare spark plugs, we're going to have everything, spare oil sump, lots and lots of parts, spare set of camshafts, so many things that we'll be able to actually then sell off, because obviously we'll have two of everything other than our 12 piston conrod, engine block, and yeah, that's it pretty much. So I'm hoping by selling off all these individual parts, I should be able to recuperate that money as well. So who knows, once I've sold off a lot of the extra parts, I could actually have a very cheap rebuild project. Here I'm draining the oil, and shock, there's more water, but what did surprise me was just how much oil there was, and even with a bit of rainwater accounted for, I still think this engine might have been overfilled. Food for thought, but now it's time to take this engine apart, so cue the time lapse. This time around, I'm just going to remove the head covers for now, before spinning the engine over and inspecting the bottom end. I was sure that it'll be easier to clear you from my mind. I had to know whether this engine block was okay, and if it wasn't, I didn't want to have to leave myself with too much to have to put back together in order to return it. This isn't the Orflex way, obviously, but hopefully you can understand my reasoning on this one. The crankshaft is now moving a bit more freely, and to my untrained eye, all looked in alright shape. Most importantly though, the block looked good as well. Finally having that peace of mind, I can now continue taking this engine apart, because I'm not going to be returning it. crankshaft pulley is a bit of a bugger to take off. You have to wedge it in order to get the bolt out, and once that's done, you can see 3 small holes in the middle of the pulley. I just screwed a bolt in from the timing cover and that eventually pressed the pulley out.
Too many noises, clash of choices, future came and left like ours. No more messing, no caressing, heavy panning on the walls. How I did it to myself, craving a hip, practice landscape.
With the timing cover, timing chains, tensioners and oil pump all out of the engine, there's enough weight out of it now for me to turn the engine around again and start removing the camshafts. Thanks to all your advice in the last video, I now know to undo the bolts from the out and work my way in. When I'm putting the engine back together, it will be the reverse sequence of this. Start in the middle and work my way out. With all 4 camshafts out, I can undo the header bolts, and once again, because of your help, I know these cannot be reused. Honestly, your support has not gone unnoticed. Right, these head bolts that you've just seen me taking out of here are actually single use because they get torqued off so heavily. I believe it stretches them and that means that they can't be reused again. So I've had to order another whole set of these, and what you've just seen me undo is 28 of them, and they're worth £10 each plus VAT. So do the maths, 280 quid plus whatever your VAT is as well. Obviously I'll reclaim the VAT personally because I'm a business, but nonetheless, that's quite expensive for a set of bolts. But there we go, it's got to be done. Now all the bolts are out, it's just a case of breaking the seal between the head and the block, after which point it just lifts off. This engine is looking pretty sorry for itself, and restoring it back to its best is honestly a challenge that really excites me. Right, one side stripped, so time to flip it over and get on with the other side. All right, now we're getting to the business end. Somewhere in here, I'm expecting to see a bearing that's gone and that's started spinning. To be honest, everything up this end, these all seem tough and, no sort of play in them whatsoever. I've, obviously given them a bit more of a wiggle than that off camera, but I'm suspecting one of the rod bearings that sort of goes around the con rods. And these are the rods that I'm talking about. Obviously, these are the ones out the engine from the old engine. But as you can see, they've got these sort of silver trays inside, otherwise known as bearings. And these are located with a tab to stop them spinning around. But what I'm expecting is that one of them is no longer seated properly. So when the engine's turning over, it's just knocking, it's whacking against the crankshaft essentially. And it's called, between the crankshaft and the rods, it's just knocking, which is causing what they call rod knock. That's what I'm expecting anyway, but there's one way to find out, so let's just jump into it. And at this point, I thought there might just be the one bad bearing, but looking back now, I was way off. You can see circled here on the first rod I inspect, the bearings are not seated in the correct position. The other thing I've noticed about these is that these bearings just don't sit in as nicely as the bearings on the other one. They almost seem like the wrong size, but more to the point on this one, if you have a look down this left-hand side, see by my thumb now, there's sort of like gratings. And it's up here as well, where my thumb is again. If I just check that off. It's this side now, nearest us. But it's almost like it's been chewed away at. And then there's a big bit in this top left, you see how it angles inwards? It's not meant to do that, that's where it's sort of wound down almost. You can see it's actually, if I get a good angle, actually bent. So that tab isn't holding it in place properly. I don't think it's spinning like the other one, but it wouldn't have been very far off. What I'll show you is, see how easily this sort of just slides around in and out. It's like it's not really being held in there. These are the old pistons from the old engine, and just look how much better this sits. The tab actually sits in there, but I can't actually just slide it around sort of freely. This actually fits in really nicely, and it's just not loose. I actually can't dislodge that, which is perfect. That's how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a tight fit. Another bearing was missing the tab entirely, but this still wasn't the worst one. I've just seen something pretty crazy. So I've been minding my own business, removing them slowly but surely. I'm on the final bits here. Just removed this, And normally for all these bearings, they've been sticking to this crankshaft. And I thought, oh, you know what, this might be the first time it's not there, because I can't see it on here. And then I couldn't see it here initially, but if you look closely, this is it. There we go. That's the remnants of this one. I mean, yeah, that is buggered. And unsurprisingly, the bearing on the other side looked similarly dreadful. All right, guys, so we got all 12 out, and yeah, it wasn't just these calamitous ones here. I've also left these ones out because they've been completely detabbed, so they're no good anymore. And then what I also noticed is all these bearings are actually suffering on the inside. If you have a look at that, that's no good. They're no good as well. And so on and so forth. And I think, yeah, this one as well. They're pretty much all like that. The crank journals aren't perfect, but they're not awful. This is obviously the worst one. This is where we've had the bearing go. As you can see, it's quite scored. But I believe that you should be able to sand, polish that down without actually taking too much more material. Because, I mean, I can run my nails over that, no problem. It's not actually that lumped. It looks worse than it is, I'd say, on camera. In person, that's the very tiny bit here is probably the most noticeable bit in the middle. But all this feels actually fine. So I'm sure, or I hope, once this has been given a sand and a polish, fingers crossed, it will be fine. But back to the bearings, this is actually from the broken piston in the old engine. And if you look, if I put it upside down, it actually stays in there because it's seated properly. Now, when I do it with those, they all drop out, and none of them actually came with the rod when I removed it. They actually stayed on the crank. So I believe this is more how it's meant to sit. And then if I go and show you, there's a good one. Well, they are compressed a bit now, but there's just too many gaps there. I don't think it's supposed to sit like that at all. If you look on the right-hand side, how it's sort of lumped in. It's almost like warped or something. Whereas these tabs seem to sit so much more nicely. I mean, not perfectly, but definitely better. And it's not easy to just move around. I can't just keep pushing it away. You know, I can roll it like that, but generally it stays in its seat. So at this point, I'm kind of curious to see if I use the bearings from the broken piston, how they're going to fit in the rods that I've just pulled out this most recent engine. I wonder if it'll be any better, but let's look. This only took a sec to put together, but the results were impressive. Wow. That looks so much better. I mean, I can't, even if I tried, these aren't moving anywhere now. These are properly seated. There's no gaps between the rod and the bearing, and as far as I'm aware, this is how it's supposed to be. All right, well, welcome back to another day. Yeah, it's been a bit of a mucky one for me. I've been cleaning a lot of the engine components outside with a jet wash. Some bits, obviously not the main block, but I've been using brake cleaner as well, here and there, but I've been very careful about that. Don't want to get it in the wrong places. But it's all just here drying away now, including the block. I have dried the top, the crank, and even the cylinders as well. But yeah, just waiting for those to dry, gonna let them sit. But in the meantime, I thought, let's get these pistons done, and it's not gonna be as messy. I'm not gonna get muck everywhere. So I'll get my camera out and I will record it. So yeah, let's jump into that. I don't have any fancy cleaning devices, so my process was simple. Brake cleaner, white spirit, and some good old-fashioned fairy liquid. It's by no means made it spotless, but it's certainly better than it was. One down and just 11 to go. And after a bit of intense labour, bit by bit, they were looking a little less sorry for themselves. I do want these to be spotless though, so if you have any suggestions on a good cleaner, let me know down below. Moving on to the bottom end, I'm starting off by using a blade to remove the bulk of the gasket remains. I'm not pressing down too heavily as I don't want to cut chunks out of the block. I'm not going into this completely blind though. I've been watching a lot of RE Performance's videos on YouTube who do this kind of thing day in, day out.
Keep winning. How the hell do you
Once I'm satisfied I've got the worst of it off, it's time to turn to the Scotch pad, and I'm using 800 grit as, again, I'm just looking to remove the residue that's been left behind and not grind away into the block itself. The flatter the surfaces, the better the seal I'll get when the new gaskets go on. Alright, well, cleaning process is very much underway, and obviously you've just, here are the photos of the before and after, and just look at the transformation. This is looking so much nicer. You can nearly eat off this. It's looking a lot better, but I do have questions for you guys, sort of more experienced ones of you at home watching this. Bits like here, if I can just show you, well, there's muck over here as well. Just little bits there, they're very, very stubborn to get off, and even with a slightly firmer Scotch pad, it's just not coming off. How important will that be? Do I actually have to make sure this surface is completely bare, or is that okay? Will I still get a good seal when I put the gaskets on? And now, naturally being my first rebuild coming up, I'm a little bit nervous about it, which is to be expected, but I think what is probably best is using you guys. You guys have been a great help so far already, is start running through my plan for the next episode now with you, and just let me know if I'm missing anything or if there's any advice or good pointers. Again, just drop in those comments below. I'll be so grateful. But yeah, let's start off with what I'm going to be doing. Okay, well, on the note cylinders, so obviously if you guys get back to me saying these bits need to go, then I'll do my best to try and remove those. Then we got the cylinders themselves. I've got a cylinder hone tool on its way, so that'll clean them all out really nicely. I've already got a box ready to go of gaskets. I actually forgot a couple of gaskets. I need to get those, chains, etc. But one other thing I thought might be good to put on. This is one of the bits I'm thinking about changing out now. This is the oil pump, and it's obviously inside the engine, inside a timing cover. And it'll sit in here somewhere, and if that fails, it's a bit of a pain. You have to remove the complete front end of the car, the radiators, etc. I imagine, bumpers, and then take the timing case off, remove your chains, etc. and then get to the oil pump behind it. So I'm thinking it's probably good as sort of preventative maintenance to swap this whilst we have such easy access to it. It's not cheap. I think they're about 500 quid online, but I think it's just peace of mind for, well, me initially, and then for whoever's going to buy this car off me. If you're interested in the car, well, get in my DMs, because the plan will be to sell this car eventually, because sadly, I need the funds, and I've decided I'm going to keep the Ferrari. So new chains, new gaskets, new oil pump. In terms of the crankshaft, I'm going to get that sanded and polished, so that's going to be absolutely fine as well. I think our piston conrod assembly is okay, but if you're not sure about those bearings, I think I should be able to take the bearings from the old ones and put them in. They seem to fit great, but I know it's a very precise thing, and even just being a little bit out can be a problem. I mean, these are the old bearings, and just look at the state of them. They are in a horrible, horrible way. But these are from the original engine that I had with this DB9. If you think these are okay, again, let me know in the comments. I think they are. They seem to have a really nice fit. Definitely better than the ones that were in there. But yeah, obviously if someone's completely in the know and knows otherwise, please let me know. And that pretty much covers it for the engine. In terms of the actual car itself, I'm going to be putting a new bumper on, and I've actually bought a new handbrake cable as well, because the rear of that at the back of the car by the brakes were rotted out. So I've just thought, you know what, I think a new one was 120 quid, or a good used one. I'm not rusted, so I'm just going to get those. But of course, I'm getting ahead of myself there, because putting that car back together is a long way off. We've still got this to put back together, and that's going to be the main focus now. So bit of a shorter episode today, but I really wanted to hear from you guys, just to hear how best to do this. And then over the Christmas period, I'm going to be getting on with actually trying to put this car together, which I'm really excited about. I really am looking forward to this, but I just know you guys have a lot more expertise than me. So yeah, any advice, any suggestions of what I should do, hit me in the comments. I'll be, like I said again, really grateful. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Obviously, hit that subscribe button if you're new, hit that thumbs up button if you've enjoyed this, and if you're looking forward to me putting this engine together, that's going to be the very next episode. So obviously hit the notifications icon as well if you want to be the first to see that, because it promises to be interesting, and I'm looking forward to taking your suggestions and getting on with it. But for now, obviously, Christmas period, Merry Christmas to all of you. And yeah, it's been an awesome year, really enjoyed it, and can't wait for 2024, but looking forward to bringing you guys along. So until then, cheers now, bye-bye.